Burkina Faso freezes assets of 113 elites under Ibrahim Traoré. Hello everyone, and welcome back. What happens when a government stops protecting the powerful and starts treating power itself as a risk to national security? What does it mean when wealth, status, and old connections suddenly offer no shelter? In early 2026, Burkina Faso made an announcement that sent shockwaves across the Sahel. The state ordered the freezing of assets linked to 113 influential figures: former presidents, ex-military leaders, wealthy business people, media owners, and political insiders. According to authorities, these individuals were allegedly connected to a coordinated effort to destabilize the country and remove Ibrahim Traoré from power. Supporters called it historic. Critics called it dangerous. But everyone agreed on one thing: a line had been crossed. Tonight, we examine what this decision reveals about modern power, why financial networks now sit at the center of political battles, and how Burkina Faso's response could reshape the rules of accountability across Africa. Stay with me. Dear friends, the most striking aspect of Burkina Faso's announcement was not the number, 113, or the speed with which accounts were frozen. It was the profile of those affected. These were not fringe actors or anonymous names. They were individuals who had shaped the country for decades, people long assumed to be untouchable. Overnight, bank accounts were locked, properties were sealed, travel permissions were suspended, and the government's message was blunt: financial power would no longer function as a shield. Authorities described the move as a security operation, not political revenge. According to official statements, intelligence services had uncovered a coordinated attempt to destabilize the state, one that relied less on visible force and more on money, influence, and narrative control. In other words, a modern coup. This matters because the nature of political disruption has changed. In the past, coups were announced on radio, soldiers appeared on television, tanks rolled into capitals. Today, disruption often begins quietly, inside offices, through bank transfers, media pressure, and institutional manipulation. Power is weakened long before any public move is made. Burkina Faso's government argues that this is exactly what it confronted: a network of insiders who understood the system intimately, former officials who knew how to move money discreetly, how to shape public perception, and how to exploit moments of insecurity. According to authorities, this made the threat more dangerous, not less. The idea that the greatest risk can come from within is not new, but publicly treating internal elites as security risks is rare and risky. Investigators say the alleged plot depended heavily on financing. Funds moved across borders through shell companies and hidden accounts. Communication relied on encrypted platforms. Meetings were held outside the country. The objective, officials claim, was to create confusion, spread fear, and strike when the state was stretched thin. What shocked many citizens was not only the scale of the alleged operation, but its proximity. Familiar names, respected figures, people who had once spoken about patriotism and stability, now accused of undermining both. The concept of enemy shifted from distant forces to suits and signatures. As the investigation deepened, the picture grew more complex. Authorities claimed to trace links between financial networks and waves of violence that had recently intensified. Attacks that once appeared disconnected were reinterpreted as part of a broader strategy designed to exhaust the population psychologically. Whether all these claims withstand legal scrutiny remains to be seen. But the public response is undeniable. Instead of retreating into fear, communities mobilized. Civilians volunteered for patrols. Local groups increased vigilance. Cities saw public demonstrations, not against the government, but in defense of sovereignty and accountability. In this moment, the streets spoke louder than boardrooms. That reaction altered the balance. Coups thrive on silence and confusion. They rely on the assumption that the public will remain passive while elites negotiate outcomes. Burkina Faso's response disrupted that assumption. By acting publicly, freezing assets, announcing investigations, broadcasting proceedings, the state changed the psychology of the moment. Money, once neutral, became evidence. According to officials, more than $28 million had been mobilized for the alleged operation. Those funds were intended to cover everything from logistics to influence campaigns. When the accounts were frozen, coordination reportedly collapsed. Payments stopped. Momentum evaporated. This illustrates a critical lesson. In modern political conflict, financial control can be as decisive as military force. At the center of the allegations stands a familiar figure, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, removed from power in 2022. The current government claims that from exile, he continued to maintain networks inside the country, coordinating strategy and timing. Authorities cite intercepted communications and financial links as part of their case. An extradition request has reportedly been issued. Publicly, responses have been limited. That silence has fueled debate both inside Burkina Faso and across the region about accountability, jurisdiction, and the limits of political protection. This is where the story expands beyond national borders. Burkina Faso's leadership argues that the alleged plot was not purely domestic. Officials speak of foreign interests operating in the background through funding, influence, and information campaigns. Not open intervention, but quiet pressure designed to reset the country's direction. For many Africans, this narrative resonates. It reflects a long-standing suspicion that decisive moments on the continent are often shaped far from public view. That suspicion, whether fully justified or not, shapes how actions are interpreted. What followed next surprised even seasoned observers. Rather than relying solely on quiet arrests, the government launched a public judicial process. Special courts were authorized, hearings were broadcast, evidence was explained, titles and status offered no exemption. For the first time in Burkina Faso's modern history, military officers, politicians, business figures, and media owners appeared within the same legal framework. The phrase "no sacred cows" echoed widely. This approach carries both promise and peril. Transparency can build trust, but only if due process is maintained. Speed can signal resolve, but it also raises questions about safeguards. Supporters argue that justice delayed has long protected impunity. Critics warn that rapid processes must still meet rigorous standards. Yet for many citizens, the emotional impact was profound. Teachers, farmers, and workers saw something they had never witnessed: the law addressing the powerful directly. For them, it felt like dignity restored. The historical memory of Thomas Sankara looms large here. Sankara's assassination in 1987 remains a national trauma, an emblem of what happens when reformers stand alone. Comparisons between Sankara and Traoré are inevitable, and they carry both hope and caution. This time, however, the context is different. Public awareness is broader. Information travels faster. Youth are organized. Communities are engaged. Whether that difference proves decisive remains an open question, but it changes the calculus. Burkina Faso is still under pressure. Threats have not disappeared, but something fundamental has shifted. The people are no longer silent. But for now, one truth stands. A nation that wakes up cannot be quietly undone. And in Burkina Faso, the awakening has already begun. Thank you for watching.